This is a reality. So are these cookies, by the way, if you want to have a little peek at some beauty there. Kevin's got the cube.
Yeah.
The Rubik's Cube. And I wish I had a bigger one. But the element of this as a marketer is that I have to turn it around to talk to a different audience. The shortest tenure in the C-suite is the CMO.
Is that because we fire them every 6 months?
Sometimes they should be, because you should be very, very nervous, because this one's happening quicker than the last one. So I'd like to welcome the audience back to the realm of possibilities. And I want to start there. Audiences. The business that I'm in is called AI advertising. And we are in finding the right targets, the target for the right message, the right creative, and the right audience. But I wish I had a sponsor like, I don't know, Crumbles, because as the cookie crumbles, wouldn't this be just a lovely little thing to be sponsoring the realm of possibilities? Really because this is a reality. So are these cookies, by the way, if you want to have a little peek at some beauty there. Derrick?
You're making me hungry.
We'll devour these later.
Okay, good.
But
I don't want to get any of my beard right now.
But the words matter.
It really does.
Because
vocabulary matters.
That's what we, in a way, as lazy marketers, have been relying on cookies to tell us who to talk to.
How so?
And they're going away. Well, that's the way you get your audience.
Oh, I see what you're saying, right? In the browser
cookie's going to crumble, and we've been given a little bit of a kind of a respite of like time, because there were a lot of people worried about advertising dollars and how it all worked. But the bottom line is they will go away, and you've got to find a new way to identify your audience in micro levels. And now these platforms will allow you to buy demographic audiences. They'll even enable you to buy behavioral or interest-based audiences. And those are good because, by the way, these platforms are fantastic. Meta, Google, LinkedIn, Trade Desk, StackAdapt, you name it. Brilliant platforms. But they're doing the same thing for everybody else. So where's your uniqueness
how
there?
how do you separate yourself from the pack when everybody gets the same?
So you used to be able to do it because you had your own property, your own site, your own cookies. But you can't use the cookies anymore, or soon.
Yeah.
So we have to develop ways to find our audience, identify what they care about, what they believe, what their interests are, what their values are. And it's that audience that you're able to then ChatGPT, say the right thing. Yeah. Generative AI, give them the right picture, the right video, with the right colors, with the right music. All of these things are elements of AI so that you then play it on the right channel, Meta, Google, LinkedIn, programmatic, everything. And then the game begins, Derrick, because that's when you have to start learning. So now you've got those out there and you've picked the right audience scientifically. Yeah. At least if you work with us.
Yeah, sure.
But the next part of it is it's still math. It's still thesis and theory. This AI is not a guarantee. Yeah. I'm going to guarantee you that you'll get everybody aware of your brand that you know. And they will all consider you and buy from you and be a loyal customer. Wrong.
Right. Yeah, that smells like snake oil, right?
Yeah.
But what you are saying, though, is that up to this point, we've been analyzing the sort of the metaverse, right? The macroverse of what's out there. But really messaging is about getting microverse now. It's about getting that super targeted, trying to understand exactly what makes that person click and deliver the message to them at the right place, the right time, in the right format. And then learn from that and repeat as needed.
So Derrick has the stone. Okay. Kevin's got the cube.
Got the cube, yeah.
The Rubik's Cube. And I wish I had a bigger one. But The element of this as a marketer
Okay.
is that I have to turn it around to talk to a different audience on a different channel. Say it because it's a different part of the funnel. And therefore serve up the right thing at the right time. And that's the business we're in. We want the marketer to be able to play this game of, what do I say now?
Yeah.
That's different from getting your attention, to having you consider me, to buy, to tell friends. They're all different on different channels and different elements. So it is all these predictors and prompts that we provide from all the deep behavioral psychology and persuasion tactics and emotions, all the things that we talked about on a prior session, is all the math. But let's make it practical. If I can give you, the marketer, a Rubik's Cube and say, you click it around and make the right choices on what to say and when, but then we have to measure it because that's not a guarantee I just gave you.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And so what works and what doesn't is as important to the algorithms, both sides, to predict or recommend what's next.
That makes sense.
What works plus what doesn't is the math to give you the recommendation of what to do next. So we call that the flywheel effect. And if you're a fan of Jim Collins and Good to Great, the flywheel, that first turn of the wheel is a tough one.
Yeah.
And there is some lifting to do any of this right. But once you figure it out and you get some momentum, the wheel keeps turning. That's the promise of machine learning and AI.
Yeah.
That you'll just get better with every cycle.
So what does that look like with a customer of yours? Are they coming to you and they're trying to figure out who the market is? Or are they trying to figure out who the message is? Or is it a combination of the two?
It's interesting. It's like, what are the
Chicken
needs
and
of the
egg, right?
marketer
Yeah.
that would bring them to us?
Right.
Well, one of them is the cookie crumbling. So there are macro things going on.
They're losing their opportunities that they had
They
previously.
better prepare for that eventuality. Another one is this magical date when AI and ChatGPT took the world by storm. Boardrooms are now going to marketers and saying, what's our AI strategy? And there's a whole lot of them that don't have an answer. So that's a reason that people would say, let's go look, let's go search. Thankfully, we have the words AI advertising and
in your name. That is helpful.
Yeah, so that'll help in the search. Another one would be the shortest tenure in the C-suite is the CMO.
Is that because we fire them every 6 months?
Sometimes they should be, because if their ideas are based off of their opinions, then you're only as good as your last opinion.
I want to come back to that
or
too,
your agency's opinion, and so it's our hope that we can arm the CMO to go do battle with the CFO, and it doesn't have to be contentious. I use that word flippantly.
Sure.
They can play on their field.
Okay.
They know the numbers.
Yeah. Right.
I was just entrusted with $10 million.
Yep.
Did I get you 10 million in sales? 20, 30, 50, 100? I was entrusted with $100,000 to go build awareness. How do I measure that? How do I tell you financially what worked, what didn't?
Yeah.
So this is the thing that I think CMOs have lacked. Chief revenue officers and CFOs and CEOs, CRM's done well.
That's interesting to me. That I had never
There's
really
no
thought about that.
platform for a CMO.
As a COO and the work that I do, I'm really big on the ROI thing, right? I don't make investments that I can't show a return on investment. Just had a board meeting last week with a company that we're working with, and it's a bunch of doctors, right? And when I
by the way, they make the worst patients.
they do make the worst patients. But when I talked to the board, what they were most impressed on is I didn't talk about costs. I talked about return on investment. I was like, here's what we found. And there's a hole here that you're losing all these dollars. We can not only fix it, we actually will improve your ROI and will increase your EBITDA. And these are the numbers of the dollars that are going to be returned to your bottom line, which to the people sitting around that table, 20%, 30%.
Right.
They know exactly what that means.
Yes.
When I say I'm going to save you $1 million and they own 50% of the company, they go, I can upgrade the yacht, right? That's the way that they're thinking. Like they're understanding how those dollars flow through. And at the end, one of the doctors said, well, what does it cost? I'm like, does it actually matter? Like, seriously, like, does it matter? I showed you the ROI. I'm happy to show you what it costs.
Right.
But does that even matter? And he laughed and was like, I mean, yes, but no, it does not matter because it's irrelevant to, as long as the ROI is there, I'm okay with that. And I do believe that I've always been really good at communicating with CFOs. I actually am keynoting a big CFO dinner here for like 250 CFOs here in a couple months because I talk in numbers. I would not have thought that chief marketing officers lacked that skill set.
They're not armed with the same dashboard that a COO
Is that because it's
or
qualitative?
CFO. Well, the causation and correlation is difficult unless you have kind of math coming in. Here's an example.
Oh, that's a good point.
I want to get your attention. I want to have some awareness. So broadcast still works, especially since it's now called, connected TV, over the top, radio, terrestrial radio, or the podcasts like this. So I heard it. I got an impression. I reached an audience. That's what you're paying for at that level. Yeah, but what sales resulted from it? Well, now you can start looking at things. You know where that signal was delivered. It's a building. And in that same building, a week later, a month later, somebody did a Google search. So people want last click attribution. They want the TV commercial that I click on the
instant
TV
response,
and I bought the car or I bought the cookie. That's not the way it works. Now, oddly enough, another gift of the pandemic, not many, the QR code and the code on the screen and on print does work. So you can point your camera at the TV or at a print piece and you could immediately take action. But the reality is there's still a lot of dough spent to get your attention and very little math to kind of tie it to a transaction or acquiring a new customer or having a customer do a return trip or buy more. They're not armed with that until now.
I can see that. I actually worked years ago in an industry, and we used to ask people in our sort of needs assessment, how did you hear about us? Now, this was 25 years ago. We used to get billboard was a very common, we saw you on a billboard. We had never run a billboard ad, ever. But it was the number one thing that people said that they saw us. And we were like what? And that's when I learned about like TOMA, top of mind awareness. It's really about just being there. When you're talking about mass media and mass marketing, you've got to be in a lot of places. You just have to be seen.
And the recall
Coca-Cola did it,
I'm in my car. Could have been on the radio. Could have been on TV last night. My recall is, I thought I saw a billboard on the way to Derrick's house. Or was it that implant that you talked about earlier?
Yeah, right. I was like, with the fMRI idea going into, there's a patent out there right now with VR headsets. One of them has an fMRI scanner in there, which means it essentially reads your brainwaves and determines, translates that back into data. And then there's this question of, well, if they can do it one way, does that mean that you remember seeing a billboard?
Yeah, but until
then,
then,
not there ever, right?
Until that's everywhere. We'll rely on call AI advertising. We'll help you connect the dots.
So let's chat specifically about that for a minute. So I'm an executive. I'm a little nervous right now about advertising in general because I know that the return on investment, may be more difficult to calculate now than ever before. There's so many media feeds. There's social media. There's paid. There's unpaid. What is a reason that a company needs to call you?
First and foremost is if they really want to get to understanding the why of their customer. Most businesses know their customers transactionally. What they buy, where they bought it, how much they bought. But they don't know who they are. And who they are is how they tick. It's why they will buy from you, continue to buy from you. So getting to the why from your customer is the business we're in. We will translate a client's customer and prospective customer data into what they believe, which is the entire beginning process of really good, emotionally driven advertising and marketing. Remember, marketing's job is to cause an emotion to take action.
Yes, that's right.
And it's, you can do it by what you buy. So we also use demographic data, third-party data, what people buy, how much they buy, lifetime value, who's the most loyal. These are critical. But you saw I reeled off a bunch of them.
Yeah.
And then add to that all the emotional triggers, and you're getting into the world of, wow, I got a lot of prompts and a lot of things to talk about. We'll score those predictors and say, these are the ones that'll resonate the most. These are the things that you put behind your message, put behind your creative, pick the right channel. And then we are not in the business of guaranteeing anything, even though this is the realm of possibilities. I like to measure the outcomes
and determine what works. So that's very interesting, because I do think a lot of times marketing people think about quality, right? The qualitative result of, well, we spent this money, these dollars on advertising, and we got the result in the end through a whole bunch of different means. I can tell you from personal experiences, 2 brands I've worked with in the golf space in the last 10 years, both of which thought that Instagram was where their target audience was, both of which thought that beautiful people swinging golf clubs, riding across courses was who their customer was. And both of them were shocked when we found that the most common name among their customers was Harold. And I'm like, how many Harolds do you know that have an Instagram account, right? It's not the 25-year-old that's buying your super expensive golf equipment. It is the 60-year-old accountant. So there is this breakdown, I think, sometimes, that marketers tend to want the customer to be something they're not. Nobody wants to market to Harold.
Right.
Unless you're selling into it, QuickBooks, right? Then you're like, that's my guy, right? But the accounting guy is not usually the target market for, influencer brands.
How many Heralds do you know?
Not very many. But I mean, it's interesting when we went through that, the names of I think it was our top 5 customers was one of those brands that was in the golf shoe space. And the top 5 names, when we looked at who we shipped them to, we were shocked, because they were not names that anybody named their kids in the last 25 years.
It's another signal. It's another side of the cube.
Right.
And it is like, names are generational.
Yeah, right. I mean, like I said, Harold, Edith. My grandmother's name was Edith. How many Ediths are in your network?
And then there's Mercedes.
Yeah.
And like, not the car, a young woman's name.
Right.
Pretty sure you can dial into
you can figure out, right, culturally and all of those kind of things.
That's right.
So there is some association between those things. I mean, Chad is not a Chad, Chad is a white guy's name, right? I mean, it's just there's some sort of standards there, and some of that was just influential. I think it's funny, how many if you meet a young lady named Brittany, she's probably right about 35. There's like certain names that sort of permeate culture,
right?
Because they were very popular at that time or place, and I think it is really easy for marketers to believe that who they're marketing to is themselves. Because you know what I'm saying? Like, they see themselves through that lens.
There's my brother, Phil, wrote a book. It's called Tuned In. And one of my favorite lines from the book is, your opinion, although interesting, is irrelevant.
So true.
It's
really true.
And it's your expectations that'll make you miserable. So there's a lot of marketing and advertising that's done out of the C-suite based on ego. And I think, and I feel, until you are all of my customers, then, we have a little bit more work to do. And we're in the business of finding out what your customers feel and what they believe and what they think. So all of this magnificent changes in AI, great tech, we kind of think we're the masters of AI because we're upstream of what you have to say to it, the prompt, the predictor, and then taking advantage of all the great things that are happening, whether it be ChatGPT, generative AI. I mean, I don't really like the ones that are generated, me personally. But if you knew that somebody standing on a street corner with a big red foam finger pointing this way worked? Do you care what I think? No.
It's very true.
You care what works.
I think sometimes...
And you care what doesn't work.
I used to see this a lot. I worked in local advertising. That's how I met my wife 20 plus years ago in the Pittsburgh market, working in local television advertising. And the indication of success most of the times for our customers was how many times they saw themselves on TV. Right? Because they were in the commercial, and they might not have been in the forefront. If it was a car dealership or something, they're right in the front. But that was always one of these things I learned really quickly. I was really successful in the industry because I wouldn't just figure out who your customer was. I would say, hey, what are you watching? I watch Bill O'Reilly every single night. Well, guess what? I'm putting your ad front and center, Bill O'Reilly, because I know that when you see it,
that's an ego buy.
It is an ego buy.
That's an ego buy. In Hollywood, buy the billboards on the drive home to the director or the producer or the business person.
Yeah.
So there are ego buys, and your opinion, although interesting, is irrelevant.
I love that.
Yeah.
So what about if you're in market? Because I think the audience for this show, right, is both the potential advertiser as well as other marketers that are out there. So if you're in marketing right now and you haven't gotten into AI yet, how nervous should you be, number one? And then what are the steps that you should take to solve that?
You should be very, very nervous.
Yeah.
Because this one's happening quicker than the last one. It wasn't that long ago where we put the knowledge of the world in our pocket.
It's really true.
What year?
Oh my goodness. When did we have
iPhone.
Wi-Fi? I mean, iPhone was what?
8?
2008?
Yeah. That's not that long ago.
It's not very long.
Okay. This cycle will be shorter.
Yeah.
Moore's law, things getting tighter and tighter. So, you should be nervous.
Yeah.
Because another reason is that the board is going to be asking these questions because it's everywhere, and it should be, because it's changing healthcare, it's changing advertising, it's changing manufacturing. So what AI is all about is a boardroom straight down to the shop floor issue. So that's the first thing, is that if you don't have a strategy or a plan, then just go get educated.
And Kevin,
come to the podcast of the Realm of Possibilities.
Right. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe.
Yes.
Is that just in audience segmentation, or is that in things like Midjourney, where building websites in fractions of seconds? I mean, is it? Well, so it really touches every aspect of marketing.
I've seen innovation in every area, and while some of the video and digital assets
they're getting
like they're made up.
Yeah.
Others are pretty good.
And you have to figure I realize how many years of AI advertising been around? Longer than ChatGPT.
Well, for us, yeah. We're going on 2 years.
Yeah. So you've been doing this before that was a thing. And I think a lot of people aren't realizing the life cycle of AI. And let's go into that for a second, because if you think ChatGPT was a big deal, which it was, we're about 6 months, and we're sitting here in June, July 2023. Early 2024 is where the revolution starts. And I'll just tell you why, and I'm in the cycle myself. You had a product come into the marketplace that was mainstream. You guys have been doing this before it was mainstream, but you had a product come into the marketplace that became mainstream. You have an entrepreneurial cycle where for 2 or 3 months, a lot of people fooled around with it.
Yep.
And then you have an innovation cycle where entrepreneurs, March, April this year, I'm one of them, started saying, ooh, wait a second. That's
good.
I know, I see where this goes.
Yeah.
They start to put the things together. And then May, they formed the company. They put the cash together. May, June, 6-month dev cycle. And this is just every other technology that's ever come out.
The dev cycle's getting shorter.
It is getting shorter and shorter, yeah. But now, not even just the dev cycle, but the dev cycle, the MVP, the initial customer. So we're not seeing anything right now. I don't believe we're seeing anything. What the true, right after Christmas, we're going to be walking into a brand new world. And maybe some of this stuff, maybe these MVPs in marketing and things are going to be tested over Christmas. But if you just look at the life cycle, most entrepreneurs, if they weren't involved in AI, they became aware of it early this year. And once that seed got put into place, it takes time for it to get through the cycle. I'm looking at my AI startup. We'll have an MVP in about August. We're going to test that September, October. We have no intention of launching that really until January, February. There's just going to be millions of them that are going to be coming like this. So if you're not, to your point, if you're not at least preparing yourself for this, there's coming a time in the next 6 months where it's going to be really tough. Yeah,
the preparing is now. The preparing is get educated.
Yep.
Go learn aspects of it. And the more businesses like mine, like others that you've talked to, that just get out there and freely share what we're thinking, what we're doing, what we're working on, will benefit a lot. All boats will rise.
Yeah.
This tide is coming in.
But if you're moored to the shore though, and the tide comes in, that's not a good thing.
That's not a good thing.
We just went through that with the Titanic. The whole thing. It's real easy to sink too.
Yeah.
But it is something I think we all have to be very aware of. I really appreciate the strategy Jamie Dimon at Chase Bank has done, where he said, "Look, we're going to create the use cases. We're going to look at this entire business." Globally, we're going to determine here's an area. We're going to understand what AI is. We're going to understand its potential. Then we're going to focus on these areas of building out use cases inside our organization, not to implement AI today, but to prepare ourselves for what AI is going to bring. And it sounds like that's what you're saying too. Is if you're in this game right now, at least get yourself educated.
Yes, and for being a player in the game, we talked about the fun I have with Cheetos. And that there's no Kevin Myers and patents on Cheetos. But in this case, this idea of the cube is a pending process patent right now because we are focused on the process. And Derrick, you love it because you can come alongside with your clicker and look at every element of the process. Every time I change my cube,
folks.
He's timing me.
Yeah.
He's measuring every click.
These are the tools of the trade.
Because it's the process, stupid.
Yeah. It really does come down to that.
So there will be, are you familiar with the MarTech logo soup?
Yes.
Where it started with 500 companies that were in technology for marketing and advertising. Imagine that, 500. Today, the ecosystem's got well over 10,000 companies.
Wow.
Now they're in all sectors. Your AI daddy friend,
Lucas,
who's tracking, how many's up to?
I know he has 600 on the core list, but there's thousands. I mean, he's been adding to it. It's crazy.
And it's early.
Like I said, those are not the companies that are innovating. What we're seeing right now is companies that are using the Chat GPT Open AI API to simulate an idea. That is not where the true innovation in AI is.
So sit back, look at your process.
Yeah.
Look what areas you know things.
Yep.
And what you don't know.
Yeah.
That's a simple process.
Sure.
What do I know? And what don't I know? And examine your business in a marketing, advertising, sales, growth, and just ask those questions. We talked about the power of why.
Yeah.
Ask why you don't know those things. This is the time. So if there's one thing that anybody could learn, it's be intensely curious. Have courage. These are the things you need to know, and now you can know them. It's go back to the phone. It's like, you want to know anything? Pick up your phone and go know it. Well, now go do the same thing in your business on all of the attributes of what you do, why you do it. Who are your customers? What do they buy? What do they believe?
Yeah.
Where do they live, shop, buy? The list is long. So a marketer that doesn't act like, maybe a editorial journalist.
Yeah. Investigative journalist even.
Thank you.
Get out there and get it. Yeah, really dig into it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I actually think one of the...
ChatGPT is the editorial one, right?
That's right.
Investigative journalist.
Investigative. Listen, I actually think that podcasts are a really good way to learn.
Yep.
Not just listening to them, but actually doing them. Because one of the advantages that you get with creating podcasts is you get an opportunity. I was telling you who I have a guest coming up. I mean, this is like hard to get guests I have coming up on one of my shows. Is
it Martha Stewart?
No, but because of his security clearance, it requires like, leadership from the federal government to be involved. Yeah. And there's going to be like some dude that's his face is like blurred out on the recording.
Yes.
There's a CIA agent that's like listening to everything and going, I'm going to shut this guy's internet down if I ask the wrong question. So, I mean, there's an opportunity with that to be curious and ask questions. It's one of the reasons that I love doing podcasting is because, I get the opportunity to sit down with global experts in something and learn from them and turn that into content. Like that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right? That is a pretty cool thing to be able to literally sit down with somebody who is truly a great mind in a space and learn from them their top secret information. I mean, that's a good way to do it. So look at podcasts, consider doing your own, right? Consider bringing, people together, even if that's something where it's just, fireside chats are a great thing too. I mean, I used to do this a lot with companies back in the day when I didn't consult, but I actually got suckered into running companies, which I don't do anymore. Do not call me. But I used to do this thing called the book report, where when we would have trends or things that were changing inside the business, I'd grab one of my people and I'm say, hey, okay, you know what? 4 weeks from today, you're presenting to the entire company 12 slides on this topic. Make us the expert.
Right.
And create the subject matter expertise inside your business. That doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't divert the resources away from the business. It's just working in the margins of the business and saying, we need to be aware of these things. How do we become experts? And I love Lucas Petty, the AI daddy, who's a good friend. Yeah. We were just at his wedding the other week. And, he was curious. He wanted to learn more about AI. He was an automation expert, a technology automation expert, wanted to learn more about AI. So he just started recording content, which forced him into the habit of being able to say, every day I have to go out and find more info. I got to find something useful. And he sort of learned from that. And I think that's a great way to learn.
Attend companies are doing webinars still.
Yeah.
Attend them. Salesforce has magnificent content. Salesforce is now, and they were in the AI game, but they just had their big coming out.
Yep.
And it was built off of the data cloud first.
Yep.
And now it's the AI cloud. And it's like, okay, those are nice words, but what does it mean?
Yeah.
They're educating, and they're doing it with brands like Rosignol.
Yeah.
And teaching people how you can be really transformational. And so I think people should sign up for these events. And you may not want to hear this, but sign up for the emails as well. Get on those email threads.
It's good stuff.
The Wall Street
email
Journal
newsletters
one I
are
get
still
is,
a really
top 10s are great. There's one I get from Wall Street Journal that tries to simplify the things that will interest me. There's actually one in AI called Decoder.
Yeah.
Have
you done, I think it's Charter. I love that one because you're a data guy too.
Yeah.
They only talk in graphs. They literally will tell you a news story, but then they'll make the graph with it.
Yep.
So like, it's just more like a headline and then the graph. And for me, I'm a very visual learner. I'm a visual management kind of guy. I'm a systems thinker. I love that. I just look at the graph and I'm like, what does that say? Causation, correlation. I go through the whole thing and then I read. Like I have to have the picture first and then I can do that. But find one that helps you. I mean, I think the one thing about information anymore is it is free.
Publishing to the way you learn.
Right. That's why I like that one. Yeah.
So as a marketer, I got to figure out, how does Derrick need to consume information? And why does he spend all his time on an infographic versus an ebook versus a webinar? So there's modals of the way we like to consume and learn. These are they're all, there's a saying in the industry now, Derrick, called the path to zero party data. Zero party.
What does that mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Zero
So third party, your data as a company is first party. You acquired it because you did business with somebody. Third party data is data aggregators. They've harvested a bunch of data, whether it's things you've purchased, your credit ratings, count how you vote. There's a lot of big data out there. That's third party data. Zero party data is where you and I develop a relationship, and you tell me something about you, and I capture it. I better capture it. I better remember it. In relation, that's a definition of a good relationship, right?
Sure.
That you told me something, and if you can get to that level of relationship as a brand, so that you can collect information that isn't somewhere else in a database, but rather I'm telling you because I care about your business, your brand, something about me. And there's a really easy way to start that. Have you seen when you go online, you get the instant polls?
Yeah.
Where you just make a selection and you see where you are in the bar chart? Put that in an email. And when people start clicking on them, you know somebody cares about you enough to tell you. Even if it was a question that you forced them. The next question is, tell me something about you. These are the paths to zero-party data. These are the signals that will allow you to know how people really feel, what triggers them, what persuades them.
I love that. Let's chat about one other thing here for a minute, because it was something that was a little bit a surprise to me, but I am talking to a publicist right now that does some work with brands, particularly brands where, and I have this company, Process Fixer, and the people that work for me are called process fixers. I go by the process fixer, they're process fixers. And we've been really struggling with trying to separate, do we separate me from the brand? Is the brand me? How do other people speak as the brand if I'm the brand? Like, we've been really going through this. And I had a great conversation with a publicist PR person last week, and she said, everything you're talking about is about likes and shares and follows, and you're trying to get these views and people to watch. And she said, have you thought about who you're trying to repel? And I just sat there for a minute. I'm like, wait, what?
So the question was the opposite?
Yeah. She's like, so you're attracting all these people. Are all of them the right people for you? And I'm like, no.
Right.
And she's like, how many followers? I'm like, well, on this platform, I have 70,000 or something. She's like, yeah. So how many of those are potential customers? I'm like,
I don't know.
Yeah, very, very few, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, so why? She's like, are you allowing the tail to wag the dog? Are you allowing the 70,000 to tell you what content they want when there's only one in there that really matters? And boy, did that mess me up, because I'm so used to, and I think as marketers, we're all used to like results, results, results. So she's like, maybe you need a repulsion technique. Maybe you need to start thinking about saying things that'll make people unfollow you and get a better, like, well, I call it influence density, right? Get a better influence density. And I was like, I'm going to hire you, because that's a really smart way of approaching it. Thinking about it in the opposite perspective and saying, it isn't just about eyeballs, it's about the right eyeballs. And so many times I think we can get hung up in this. We can get hung up in, did I get 100,000 views? Did I get 50,000? I did a podcast for a company a few years back, and I don't think any of the episodes did more like 80 listens. But every episode got her 5 to 10 new customers. So do we care if 1 million people listen?
Well, it's really I love that idea.
Yeah.
To repel the ones that you shouldn't be spending time with. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, sure.
They can self-select out.
Absolutely. They can still participate if they want, but I'm not designing my content for them.
You're segmenting towards those that probably matter the most.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother thread. Like, people come up with stop doing lists.
Yeah. I'm a big not to do list fan. I'm a highest and best use. If somebody can do it for cheaper than I can, if I look at my dollar per hour as a consultant, right? If somebody can do something for half that, then I have to give it to them.
The first question I'd ask in that repel list is, do you know which ones
I don't.
you want to repel? And do you know why?
Yeah, and I think
go know it.
Right, and that's why, and I really have to give her credit. I mean, I think her name's Emily, and I'm going to be engaging with you, Emily, because it was one of those things where she sent the proposal afterwards, and I couldn't even reply because that was hung up in my head.
Yeah,
this idea that somebody's actually telling me it's not about growth, and it's funny because I talk about this all the time with companies. I tell them it's not about sales growth; it's about bottom line growth. You talked about it with the Cheetos thing, right?
Yep.
It's not about getting the job done. It's about getting the job done more efficiently. And isn't it funny that I couldn't take my own advice? Like, I was sitting there trying to acquire all these followers and
there's something fascinating about when you You'll know organically your repel list when you're really anchored in on what you value. Okay. You and the brand. If you've got your values and you start espousing them,
Yeah.
the repel list will come naturally because you'll get more personal. And the more personal you get, the more likely you're going to have the relationship with the ones you want. So, I mean, that's an area to explore is, and you and I could even do it now. It's like, we know each other well, but what do you value most in your entire life, Derrick?
What do I
I'll
value
start.
most, please?
My faith, my bride,
Yeah.
my family, my friends, my firm. I like what I do.
Yeah.
My finances, my
Yeah.
fitness.
Yeah.
Did you notice they were all F's?
That was.
It's
Did you
just,
plan that? You
I
did.
heard it
Yeah.
and then I went, am I living it? And even we talked about vocabulary, even a word like faith
Yeah.
can turn people off.
It really can.
Literally the word, you say faith and it's like, oh, here comes Kevin, he's gonna be judgmental.
Yeah.
And okay, shame on people that would do that.
Right. Yeah.
Faith is the process, love is the action. Faith's the process for me.
Yeah. Right.
Love's the action. So I should put an L in front of those F's.
Yeah.
Because I value love above all. Now, if we have a relationship that I will share that with you,
Yeah.
and anybody who's going to listen in,
Sure.
they could know how to repel me if they needed to,
It's very true.
because we're getting to zero party data. We're getting to a relationship. We're getting to the things that
really
matter
like that.
most.
That concept, I don't think I've ever heard it articulated that way, but it is really good because it is true that for me, it's time and impact, right? I think a lot about time. I think I mentioned it before, this
That
concept.
resonates
of,
with me.
Yeah, right.
Because process and clicking
I'm
and
very,
fixing.
I'm very,
Yeah.
I tell people I'm not fat. I'm just super efficient with calories. I just move as little as possible to try to burn,
Yeah.
No. But it's this idea that time is so valuable. And I got to tell you, I don't think, I grew up in very blue collar and, we cut our own grass because we couldn't afford anything
Right.
else. Now I can't afford to do it. Like you asked me about,
Time.
you asked me about
Yeah.
the landscaping here
Yeah.
at my place and, all this like pristine bananas and all those things that I grow here. And it's like, I participate in the fertilization, the propagation and the trimming of these things in the way that I want them. What I do not participate in is the cleanup, the all of the detail care work. And that is because I understand my value per hour and I understand what they charge per hour. And I look at the difference as a loss. So for me, it's a very logical decision not to. Now, my wife will tell you I'm just not handy, but I will tell you, I got to come up with a business purpose to
You're
hire
very
the
handy
handy.
with your time.
Yeah, I'm very handy with my time. Thank you. That's a
Yeah,
really.
you-
I'm going to write that down.
you-
Tracy Ann, can you hear that? But it is really true. Time to me is the most important commodity because you have so little of it.
Yep.
And I think as you get older, you recognize that. Somebody asked me, and you were here. I had my 50th birthday party, and somebody said about, "Oh, do you wish you were younger?" And I'm like, absolutely not. I'm so happy that I'm the age that I am because 49-year-old Derrick wasn't. I look at 49-year-old Derrick and I go, that guy was not very smart. And 48-year-old Derrick was less smart because I think over time I've been able to understand and appreciate the value of time. So that's
Life's
for me.
cruel joke is wisdom doesn't come earlier.
Boy, no kidding. Man, I'll tell you, you look back at all the different things that you
Yeah.
did and stupid things you said.
But they
and
made
mistakes.
us who we are.
They did. I
Some of
wish
them-
maybe I could go
Yeah.
back and, sometimes I thank God for unanswered prayers. I have to remind myself that Garth Brooks is a
Well,
great
there's
philosopher.
no time machines here.
No, there's not. And, but going back to that conversation we had really early about therapy, I think that's one of those opportunities you do get to go back in time.
And yes,
do. And you get to-
unring a bell
Yeah.
that doesn't need to keep ringing.
Yeah. And sometimes I think what you find is that if you can get the right perspective, and again, we're talking about customers, but I think it's interesting. It's hard to do this, to think about a customer that you're marketing to if you can't do it to yourself. You got to be able to eat your own.
Think of
eat your own cake.
relationships. Like we overcomplicate things. If you can think of a relationship, you can figure out how to market.
Yeah.
If you think of a lemonade stand, you can figure out how to market. Literally, it's let's quit overcomplicating some things, and get to the basics of others.
I think it's some of that too is just breaking down your own purchases and decisions, and saying, well, why did I buy this? Why do I drive this car? What is it that I'm trying to say to the world? What is it that I'm trying to say to myself? What is it that I'm trying to be? I think if you understand those things more clearly, you truly can become a better marketer. Now that's interesting because we've talked a little bit about this augmentation where I think the marketer of the future isn't just, it isn't just AI. It isn't just a human. It's the combination of the two.
Marketer plus machine in my case.
Yes.
I'll give a shout out to a great creative that I had the privilege of working with at Cold Stone. His name's Rob Penny.
Okay.
And he transformed kind of a checkerboard ice cream shop into the ultimate ice cream experience.
Yeah.
And in the way we treated people when their hand hit the door, to the way we served and had theater, and
there's a lot of theater to that.
A lot of theater.
There's noise.
And Rob, the way he photographed it, Rob said, he goes, I don't care how good that car looks. I care how good I look in that car.
Wasn't that the truth?
How Rob feels. How do I look? It's about, sorry, marketers, it's about me. And that's me as the customer, not you as the brand. So maybe that's a good place to park this, is that
I think that
it's
is.
not about me, the brand.
I want to leave on one last point that I didn't make earlier, but it goes to this whole concept of followers and getting the right followers, right? You're a man of faith, and I think, if we look at Jesus, right, in 3 years, 33 years on the planet, he had 12. Well, 11, if you really, he had one unfollowing late in the process here, but by any standard, that wasn't very good, right? By any standard, he failed at the time, right? At the time, in the short term.
But look at the magic. Talk about word of mouth.
Right.
There's never been a better one from 1 to 12 minus 1.
Yeah, right.
To billions.
Billions. I mean, that is a perfect example.
Because of love above all.
Yeah.
And deeply seated feelings. And there's a whole good lesson.
I think there is. And I think it's something we should talk about a little bit more going forward is, I talk a lot anymore about this concept of influence density. And this actually came from my therapist. My therapist said, I was saying about, I have a sort of a small group of people that I like, I have a small group of guys that I get together with on a regular basis, and we sort of talk about stuff. And I said, I hold influence there. And he said, no, you don't. You hold influence over all the people they hold influence over.
Yes.
And I was like, whoa. Because some of these guys are running big corporations with, tens of thousands of people. And he's like, no, that phrase is not influencing that person. It's influencing tens of thousands. So be careful with what you say. So I like that. That's a good place to break.
Yes.
We'll
Perfect.
We'll come back and do another one.